There was a time when Capcom stood untouchable, a titan in an industry filled with giants. The creators of Street Fighter, the architects of Resident Evil, and the minds behind Devil May Cry, Mega Man, Monster Hunter, some of the most legendary titles to ever grace the screen. For decades, Capcom wasn't just a company, they were a seal of approval. A seal of quality. But what if I told you that all of that almost collapsed? What if I told you that Capcom, that Capcom, spent nearly a decade in creative chaos, making decisions so baffling, so misaligned with what made them great, that fans started walking away? What caused a company that helped define modern gaming to lose its identity? Why did it start chasing trends it never needed to chase? How did the creators of genre-defining masterpieces become a shadow of their former selves, misfiring on one project after another, while their biggest stars were left to rot in silence? This wasn't just a dip in quality, it was a full-blown dino crisis. And yet, out of the chaos, something remarkable happened. Capcom came back. They pulled off what most companies only dream of, a redemption arc so strong, it's now become a blueprint for how to rebuild from failure. But how did they do it? And what lessons does it hold for every developer today? Let's dig in. This is the rise, fall, and rise again of Capcom. Welcome to WeGamers XP, I'm Dario, and if you're liking this video so far, just give it a thumbs up and maybe even consider subscribing so you can see more of this type of content in the future. Now with that being said, let's get back onto the video. To understand Capcom's fall, we first need to appreciate how high they climbed. The year is 1979. Capcom starts out small, coin-operated machines, arcades, but it doesn't take long before they evolve into something more. 1984, their first official game, Vulgus. Not a hit, but the start of something. 1987, Mega Man. Capcom enters the homes of millions. Then comes the Street Fighter series, Final Fight, Ghosts and Goblins, Breath of Fire. They weren't just pumping out games, they were building genres. And then, Resident Evil in 1996. Capcom didn't just dip into survival horror, they defined it. The fixed camera angles, the puzzle solving, the tension, it wasn't just a game, it was a full movement. Then came Devil May Cry, Onimusha, Phoenix Wright, Okami, Monster Hunter. What made Capcom special was their consistency across genres. Fighters, action, horror, RPGs, even quirky visual novels. They crushed it all. Every game had personality. Every game had a mechanics first design. By the early 2000s, Capcom wasn't just a great developer. They were one of the best in the world. So how do you go from that to being laughed at? The fall didn't come all at once. There was no dramatic explosion, no one headline to pin it on. Instead, it came like a slow bleed, so subtle you barely noticed, until you looked back and realized that the wound had been open for years. So what went wrong? Capcom began to shift its focus, not towards innovation, but towards imitation. They looked at Western developers dominating sales charts with cinematic action-heavy blockbusters, and they asked the wrong questions. They asked, how do we be more like them? Instead of trusting what made them unique, they started chasing trends, chasing the West, and chasing what they thought players wanted. And it showed. Resident Evil 5 swang and missed. It was more action and less tension. Resident Evil 6, bloated mess with multiple campaigns and explosive set pieces. Fans asked, where was the horror? Where's the atmosphere? The soul was gone. Then there was Lost Planet 3. It was outsourced, it was buggy, directionless.
Bionic Commando?
A once revered series rebooted with dark gritty realism, and a deep twist about a man's wife being fused into his robot arm. Yeah, seriously. What about Mega Man, one of the most recognizable faces in gaming? Cancelled, over and over. Mega Man Universe, Mega Man Legends 3, both killed off. Fans were devastated. There was no remasters, no revivals, just silence. And then came Street Fighter X Tekken, a dream crossover. Sabotaged by on-disc DLC controversy, characters locked behind paywalls, despite already existing on the disc, Capcom tried to defend it, but players felt betrayed. Was this the same company they used to trust? Capcom had lost its creative compass, and behind the scenes, things were getting even worse. Kenji Inafune, one of their most important creators, left the company. Publicly, his reason? Capcom had become stagnant. Afraid to take risks, afraid to evolve on their own terms. They weren't just making bad games, they were making games that didn't feel like Capcom. And perhaps the biggest tragedy of all, they were no longer leading, they were following. The studio that once set the pace for the entire industry was now just another developer trying to catch up. But here's the twist. Sometimes, hitting rock bottom is what it takes to rebuild. Capcom's redemption arc didn't start with an announcement, it started with a risk. Resident Evil 7, a first-person, back-to-basics horror game. It was a gamble, a total reinvention of the franchise. But here's the thing, it respected the soul of what made the series great. The tension, the resource management, isolation, that slow creeping dread, and players loved it. Resident Evil 7 didn't just bring Capcom back into conversation, it reignited the fire. Then came Monster Hunter World, a series long confined to handhelds and niche audiences, suddenly made global. It was modern, it was accessible, but still had that Capcom depth. That grind, the loop, it became Capcom's best-selling game of all time. Then came Devil May Cry 5, Resident Evil 2 Remake, Street Fighter 6, one after another, polished, exciting, and confident releases. Each game felt like a love letter to long-term fans. Capcom wasn't chasing anymore, they had remembered who they were. They rebuilt in-house teams. They stopped outsourcing core franchises. They invested in their own proprietary engine, the RE engine, and committed to quality. Not to mention how good that engine performs, it's just insane. Their storytelling tightened. Their combat system deepened. Their visual direction became sharper than ever before. It was like watching a Rocky movie, knocked out at first, but come back to win at the end. Capcom was back, and they were better than ever. Capcom's revival didn't happen by accident. It wasn't luck. It was a masterclass in humility, clarity, and strategy. So what can other developers learn from it? Capcom listened. They paid attention to fan feedback, not only just on forums, but in design philosophy. They stopped assuming what people wanted and started building from passion again. They modernized without losing soul. Resident Evil 2 Remake wasn't just prettier, it was mechanically reimagined with purpose. Devil May Cry 5 kept its style, but redefined the engine. They brought development back home. No more outsourcing core franchises. They built trust in their own people. They respected their history. Games like Mega Man 11 and Great Ace Attorney Chronicles didn't just revive classics, they treated them with reverence. This is how you earn back trust of an entire generation, by doing the work. But let's not crown them perfect. Capcom's doing great, but cracks still remain. Like, where's Dino Crisis? A franchise fans have begged for to see a return. Where's a truly new IP, a bold step forward? And with Street Fighter 6, are we starting to see live service elements creep in too much? Battle passes, cosmetics, DLC bundles? It's a delicate balance between sustainability and over-monetization. Will Capcom hold that line? And while the remakes are stellar with Resident Evil 2, 3, and 4, what happens when the well runs dry? You can't necessarily remake 5 and 6, unless you did a complete remake of it, changing the structure and going all out. The next few years will be a test whether Capcom is still hungry, or coasting. The comeback is real. I mean, Monster Hunter Wilds sold over 10 million copies. That's a crazy amount of copies sold. The comeback is real, but staying great, that's the harder part. Now don't get me wrong, Capcom's story is one of the rarest arcs in gaming history. They fell hard, publicly and repeatedly, and they clawed their way back. They didn't launch a flashy apology campaign, they didn't make excuses. They made games, great games. Capcom reminded the industry and the world of what happens when a company trusts its creators, respects its fans, and remembers why it mattered in the first place. They didn't reboot, they remembered. Then they rebuilt. So now we ask, when the next gaming titan stumbles, whether it's EA, Ubisoft, Rockstar maybe, will they have the courage to do what Capcom did, or will they fade into memory? Capcom didn't just survive, they thrived. And now the whole industry is trying to play catch up. I want to say thank you so much for watching, guys. I'm Dario from WeGamers XP. If you like this video, don't hesitate to give it a thumbs up and maybe even subscribe so you can see more of this type of content. And I'll see you guys in the next video.